great, Frank.
Oops.
Looking excellent.
Still alive, brother.
Nice.
So here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2. Hey, fight fans, welcome to Gonzo MMA, your premier no-holds-barred deep dive mixed martial arts podcast. I'm your host, Evil Eddie, and I'm joined by my co-host, Ted Check. Today, in our inaugural broadcast, we have a very special guest. He's a legend in the sport, and not just because it's his nickname, but because he truly is Frank, the legend Shamrock, who's carved his name into the record books and out from older brother Ken's shadow by establishing himself as one of the first legitimate, well-rounded fighters excelling in striking, submission, cardio, and pure athleticism. Frank won titles in Pancrase and the UFC. In the UFC, Frank achieved an amazing feat. All of his fights were for titles, and he went undefeated. And another first, when he left the UFC, he became MMA's first free agent of sorts, fighting in K1, the WEC, Strikeforce, and Elite XC. Now retired from the fort, Frank is a motivational speaker and serial entrepreneur in Southern California. Frank, welcome to Gonzo MMA. It's great to have you as our first guest. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. It's nice to be here.
Hey, Frank. Great to see you.
How's it, Ted? Hell yeah.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
We're getting older, brother.
Yes, sir. So I wanted to kick things off. Eddie and I did a lot of research on you, and I was looking back through your fight history. Your first professional fight ever was in the deep end in Pancrase against Boss Rutan. I'm amazed by that. I mean, of all the things that you've achieved, to me, that actually kind of stands out. So my question to you is, so Ken fought Boss, I think just a few months, or I think he fought him in July, and then you fought him in December of that year, 1994. And you were training at the Lions Den at that time. Did Ken give you a lot of intel on this guy, or were you kind of going into it blind and not knowing what to expect, maybe other than he was a kickboxer?
Yeah, honestly, I didn't know anything about him. I hadn't seen him fight or perform or anything. And I didn't even know I was fighting Boss until I was living in Japan training at the Japanese dojo. So they just came in one day and they're like, "Oh, your first match will be Boss Rutan." I was like, "Oh, okay." And then anytime I had one of my teachers or the other young fighters with me, "Oh, what do you know about Boss Rutan?" They would all just go, "Oh," and like look down. And that's how I knew I was in trouble. I was like, "Oh man, this is not good."
Oh man, wow.
Yeah, that's when I found out. I was living in the dojo. Someone came in, they're like, "Fighting Boss," and then everybody else was doing the down eye. And I grew up on the streets. I don't know what the down eye means.
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, you did well. You won the majority decision in that first fight with him, and but the other thing I wanted to ask you about that was so you're training in the dojo in Japan. So I guess you had time to familiarize yourself with the Pancrase rules, because they were very different from what was going on, I guess, in other parts of the world. I mean, the UFC had just started up in '93, but then you had stuff going on in Brazil that was kind of similar to the, well, they had a ring, and it was bare knuckle, but and you could headbutt, and I mean that was almost anything goes. But so Pancrase, very interesting rules, where you I understand that, because I think I heard Boss say this. It was a gentleman's agreement that you could not strike on the ground.
Yeah.
But that could also, in the course of the fight, be broken, I guess, if you both agreed to it. Tell me how that went.
Yeah, it was true to its title. It was hybrid wrestling. Like there was K1, there was all these different iterations put in the UFC, but nobody was doing it from a pro wrestling performance base, right? Everyone else was fighting or kicking or punching or whatever. And because the roots of Pancrase were from pro wrestling, it was just the realest you could get in pro wrestling. We were beating the hell out of each other.
Yeah.
But there was gentlemen's rules, like in wrestling. You don't break a lock, you don't hurt somebody, you don't do this, you don't do that. So the beauty of the Japanese culture and being at that time was everybody accepted the rule, but if someone else broke the rule, then the rules were off, right? Because you broke the agreement, you broke the thing. We're trying to perform, we're trying to do this very complicated performance-based fighting style for the crowd.
Right.
But when someone broke the rules, then it was everything flew out the window instantly.
Yeah.
And then we were like clubbing each other, and but most of them, I mean, majority of my fights were under the gentleman's thing because, if you get caught in a lock and you have wronged that guy, he'll break your leg, and then you won't perform for 6 months. So where does honor and respect come in? Because if he breaks your leg, you're done maybe you're done forever. And so there was just such a high level of respect because it was so dangerous. Because we knew the locks were real. Like we knew all the stuff. We might be playing with some of these slapping and stuff, and that might be part of the entertainment. But you break someone's knee backwards, they're never going to walk again. Like it just So there was always this undercurrent of we should respect that because it's the right thing.
And then you mentioned slapping. There's open-handed strikes, but Boss in your second fight, Boss caught you with a spinning back fist.
Oh yeah.
So back fist being the operative word there.
Well, if you look at where Pancrase is now, it's full MMA. And, what we were doing back then was you can't fight an MMA fight every 6 weeks or 7 weeks or 8 weeks. I mean, you're getting destroyed. You're getting cut. You're getting contusions. You're getting massive bruises that you'll never heal from before your next performance. And they knew that because they'd done wrestling all these years and had all these, experiences and stuff. So part of that gentleman's agreement was keep us safe. Like, hey, don't break my arm. I'll give up. Hey, you got me. It's good. Like we're good here. But there was a lot of respect in that. People, you can see when someone got mad and then they hurt somebody because it was like, oh, he broke the rule and he broke the rule and now that dude's hurt. It's like, oh man, that's just bad chi all the way around.
Right.
You can't beat, you can't barefist it, every 6 weeks. And, that was very wise on their part. And, having a league like that, having a social structure like that, everyone believed the same. It was only when the new guys came, we were like, hey man, by the way, this is how things are. And you can see the look on their face like, that doesn't make all that much sense. And then they'd be in it for 3 or 4 months. And then they'd be like, oh, understood. Like, understood.
Gotcha.
So back then, what were the contracts like? We're going to get into it in just a little bit about you really being the first Francis Ngannou. You're like the pioneer of fighters who really wanted their rights. So I'm really interested in finding out what was the contract like back then when you signed with them?
Yeah, I mean, the first contract I ever got was a year-long contract. And I think I needed to perform 9 times or 8 times during the course of the contract. Wow. And so, sometimes, or maybe it was 10 times, don't know. But, and then I got $5,000 a month in my first contract. Prior to that, I got $1,500 to fight Boss. Maybe 1,800. I might have got 1,800. And then that stayed for a couple, and then I got like 22. And then they came in after, a year of me working and performing and said, hey, we want to give you a contract, tie you in, have you perform all the time.
And like, what was going on backstage? Because back then you see these guys all buffed up, this and that. Like when you were back there, like what was your first experience maybe seeing PED use or anything like that? Was it open? Was it secret? What was it like back then in the dark ages of mixed martial arts?
I mean, I honestly didn't know anything about it. And in Japan, it hadn't come yet. Right. So this is 94. They didn't, it wasn't a thing yet. People didn't know you could get it. They didn't know what the results were. I think it was like a out of country thing. But I saw, rapid progression as foreigners came in, the Dutch and all these different guys, Brazilians coming in. They were pretty open about it. In their use, and because in Brazil it's not illegal. You go to the store, you get some steroids, like you're good. Mexico is not illegal; it's not a problem. But it didn't really affect. I never saw it. I didn't, participate in it. The closest I ever got to it was learning my brother did it, and then seeing his thing and seeing his struggle to keep it going and all the different things, which is the reason why I never did it. You know, I could see the psychological difference that happened when the super medicine and the super thing went away. And this is a sport of fighting and psychology and, you know, long term, you know, game plan and strategic thinking. And, you know, I could see that those guys were distracted by this secret sauce that made them all of a sudden wonderful and strong. But it's not real. And I could see that it wasn't real because when they came to be tested, they would crumble. You know, they couldn't close because at the back of their minds, they let their brains go, yeah, but it's not real. So, you know, we don't know if we're going to be able to do that. And so it was just like a huge thing. But yeah, in Japan, no, I mean, it was highly illegal. You know, Japan, you get kicked out for 10 years for marijuana. Like, they kick John Lennon out. Like, they're very strict about legalities and how things work over there. So, especially as a young man, none of that stuff was exposed to me. I didn't know we were working for the Yakuza. Like, I didn't know any of this stuff was happening. I was just in there fighting and trying to win and not get my ass kicked. But yeah, as I got older, I learned all of this. And then, you know, I made a value decision not to do that. I'm 50 years old. I don't want my heart enlarged or my arteries blown up, or like, I don't want all these things that my colleagues who chose the other path are now suffering from.
I guess my next question here would be following up on what you were talking about with the Yakuza and all that. Did you hear anything about like fight fixing back then, or like was it known amongst people? Like, what was like your first experience hearing about something like that, and how would you might have react to hearing something like that as a fighter and trying to keep, you know, the truth alive as a mixed martial artist?
Yeah, I mean, nobody ever approached me or said, hey, you know, this is what we need to do, or hey, by the way, this is better. But if you look at matches like, you know, Ken Shamrock fighting anybody less than 150 pounds, like he's going to murder them, literally murder them, just like snap them in half. And so as I got older and watched, I realized, like, wait a minute, that guy challenges me and that guy doesn't. And now they're having this amazing sort of equalized match. That didn't make a lot of sense. So I could tell that at some point it was better to do certain things than not for the success of the company, because we're all working for this thing. But again, I don't think I ever got that level of status inside the group for someone to say, hey, man, you're so good that we need you to help this guy and maybe just not kill him. And
Because one of the things about you, I remember I watched so many documentaries, and over the years, one of the things that really stood out to me was you were a kid watching boxing and you were seeing champions speak. And the one, I'm getting chills right now about to say this, you know, for the fighters who can't speak, it's just as important as being a champion to be able to speak about the things in your position over the years. And I want to thank you for talking about some of these subjects here. Ted has a question for you here, going off of this one.
Yes, I do, Eddie. Uh, so Frank, you know, talking about the psychology of you know, and how the mind is so much a part of the sport.
mm-hmm.
You used I remember you saying in a documentary that you discovered that if you turned to a life of crime, that would get you out of your house where you were enduring all these you were being mistreated. And so you figured that out. Oh, okay. If I commit this and this, well, I can get to juvie hall and I'll be out of my house. Were you able to? So that was a motivation for you. Were you able to? What was your motivation for fighting? Was it just simply to make a living, or were you able to take how you were treated in your home and have that motivate you? Did you use that as motivation for your success in the ring and the cage?
Yeah, but I think there's two separate concepts there, right? So for the psychology side, yeah, I quickly realized, you know, that my mind was way stronger than all of these other people's, and it was because of my experiences. Be locked in a closet, go to prison, you know, all these things that strain your mind. They're unbelievable, but then you go through them, so then you're like, whoa, you feel differently. So I quickly realized that if I just never gave up and I just kept coming, eventually they would be like, well, maybe I can't, you know, people's brains would break. They would literally, I'd watch their body, their brain, their whole thing go, I can't do it, I have to quit. And you don't get to do that in prison. You don't get to do that in the streets because you die. And so I had an edge of that was way stronger than most people's. So that and sadly came from how jacked up and messed up my childhood was. But what I used it for in fighting was because we all have that. We all feel that way, right? And so if we're already in a times 10 situation, like fighting in a cage for money in a foreign country, and then someone comes along and adds more to that, it just makes it harder for you psychologically to deal with the situation, right? That's where we're at with mental health and community. That's why society is all having all these issues, because it's a lot of stuff that we're trying to deal with and still be productive. Try to be productive on a times 10, your life is at risk situation, easy to break the brain. And so once I found that tool, and then I could keep my body at a pace where I didn't have to get tired, I didn't have to rest, I could just keep pressing you. The game was over for me, because, and then I realized that you need vascular conditioning from Maurice Smith. And once I found that tool, I could literally just fight forever and watch the human body just crumble, mind, body, the spirit out the window. Mm-hmm. And so it became one of my biggest tools. Conditioning and mindset and just determination was like one of my early biggest tools. And then I think there's a middle question, like, do you need that stuff to have a really strong mind? And is that necessary for success? And yes and no. You don't need to traumatize people to make a strong mind, because the mind is just a computer and it's made of plastic, so you can mold it any way you want to, right? So it's just that people that end up on this side with trauma, they're more determined, because their brain's going, I don't want to die in the street. I don't want this to happen. I don't want to be in jail. I don't want it anymore. So they're willing to fight harder and press more. And I think that was the distinction for me. And then I was smart and I was into it. Like, I realized, still believe. I still believe in martial arts is one of the greatest things you can do for your body, your community, yourself. I don't walk around afraid. I'm never going, oh my God, I'm a little worried here. Like, I never have that feeling. But people come to me all the time and they're like, dude, this makes me nervous. And I don't know what I would do. I'll be like, well, this is exactly what we would do. But I realize people haven't been there, people haven't done it, people don't know how to defend themselves, so they don't feel good. Yeah. They're not happy, they don't feel protected. I don't have that feeling. I feel amazing. I feel like no one's ever gonna bother me. I used to kill people with my hands for money. Like, I'm good. And the mindset of that, once you cross over those barriers, right? And my barrier was fighting Encinanomi. He bent me over. He mounted, and when he bent me over, he I got a broken back, and so he popped my vertebrae in place, full on mounts me, and is elbowing my face in. And I'm laying there, and I had the moment. I was like, well, maybe I can't do this. Maybe this is it. Maybe I die here. And then because I made the commitment and went, no, what are you doing? Nobody's ever going to kill me. I popped up and knocked him out. But there was
you flipped the switch right there.
You can watch it in the fight. There's a moment where I'm looking around and I go, no, absolutely not. And I make the decision, I'm going to fight until one of us is dead. But I'm not dead, so let's keep rolling. And that mentality, once I flipped that switch, was it 97? It was a 97. Then I beat everybody forever, because it was
even in the boss fight. We saw that as well, where when he was on top of you and he was just going, and you said no, and you just said, I got to move forward, right?
Yeah. And I've had, everyone questions a move, everyone questions position, but I think very few people go, I think I might die now. Am I okay with it? Or do we stop, or do we carry on? And for me, it was like this invisible line. I grew up on the streets. A bunch of my friends died in prison and the streets and all this different stuff. And, for me, that was my level of commitment. And it was my dream. You mentioned the boxing as a kid. This sport didn't exist when I was watching champions speak about what's important to them and how to become a champion. And it was just guys coming out and boxing and saying, I want to thank the Lord and this and that. And those guys are my heroes, because they went out, they performed, they fought tooth and nail, and then they grabbed that mic and said something important. And to me, I was like, that's what a champion does. That's what a real man, a real warrior man does. And that's what I want to do. And then just, by whatever universe, it became a sport and developed. And by the time I got to prison, It was just waiting for me.
So Frank, when Ken said to you, I forget when exactly this was, but he said that he told you you wouldn't make it. I think it was when he gave you or allowed you to run the
Yeah.
Lions Den or something like that, and then he got angry at you for whatever reason. And am I right in this that he then said, "Well, you're never going to make it," or something like that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's yeah, he did say that, but it wasn't
Were you able to take that and use that as motivation as well?
Yeah. Well,
Be like, I'll show him.
yeah. Well, it was motivating because I wanted to prove him wrong, do my thing. But really, when he said that, I mean, he's my mentor, he's my coach. So, but it wasn't like you're not going to make it. It was you're nice, you're kind, and championship and champions are different. Or it was along this lines of you're too nice
Huh.
to become a champion. So I don't want you to be hurt because you're nice, you're kind,
Oh, okay.
and I don't want that because I think this was his mindset. You got to be tough.
Tough love.
This was the day of machismo and toughness and all this other stuff. But I don't think he really saw what I was doing. I was writing notes, I was a nerd, but I was also a super athlete, and I don't think he tied those two together. Now people know, oh, smart people, athletics, like, hello, that's super simple. Back then, you were tough as nails, or you couldn't get through the door. We had that insane tryout where it's like we would destroy people, mind, body, and spirit, not just destroy them. And if they didn't give up, that's how you got on the team. There was no skill required. There was nothing. You just take a beating, face your fears, your death, and then, hey, if you don't quit, you're on the team. That was the basis of how we built Lions Den. So I didn't take it in the way of, oh, he doesn't believe in me. I took it as like, he has no clue what I'm doing. Like he's not looking at my notebooks. Like he doesn't get it. And so it gave me validation, both to prove him wrong, but also to carry on my study. Because I was like, dude, if this guy doesn't see it, I mean, I could do all this stuff. The world is open for me to become burst complete. Like I could figure this out before anybody else, make a ton of money, and get the hell out of the sport before I hurt myself. So that's why I moved away and built the teams and did all these things, because part of me in my logical mind went, that makes no sense. I went to prison. I fought prison fights. I lived on the streets. I know what real toughness is. And I was like, I just need techniques and mechanics. I need to understand the system, and nobody has yet. And yeah, I went off and did it. And honestly, the greatest thing that ever happened to me, because I didn't realize I was under this umbrella of thinking. It was the thinking above me that was stopping me from moving forward. And once I was gone, I conquered everything.
So at this point, you sign with the UFC, you become the champion, you get fights finished under a minute. You didn't even spend 25 minutes in there. This point, your name's rising, you're proving everyone wrong, but still people are telling you, no, we still have control over you. So like I mentioned before, you were really the first Francis Ngannou that stood up against Dana White in the UFC to say, fighters deserve more. What was your contract like back then, and what didn't you like about it that you wanted changed that really made you say, hey, I'm a champion, but tonight I'm gonna leave it in here for the next one?
Well, it took me many years to afford a sports entertainment attorney. We just didn't make a lot of money. And the contracts were from Japan. They were very simple. But as soon as we got over here and I started performing, the contracts got super complicated for intellectual properties, all this stuff that I didn't understand. And it was actually just by chance. I was the girl I ended up marrying, Angelina, my second wife, her stepdad, Al Seahorn, was a very successful businessman. And it's a funny story, but he caught us in bed one night. And his bed was the golden rule. You don't ever go in my bed. You don't ever do this. And he came in and, gave me the dad look and said, I'm going to speak to you outside. And so I went out there and sat down, and he gave me the dad talk. And he said, what are you doing? This you don't do, but what else are you doing? And where are you with my daughter? And he gave me this whole, pep talk, or not pep talk, dad talk. But the end of it was, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing with your life? And I go, oh, sir, I'm on this martial arts journey, and I got this, and I just came from Japan, and I think I could win this championship, and I got this contract now that I don't understand, and I need, I need some guidance because I'm going to be the next world champion. I literally tell him just like this, and he goes, there's only one man I've ever heard that does things like that, and he's like, his name is Henry Holmes. I'm going to give you his number. And so that was my first entertainment lawyer. He looked over my contracts. He goes, oh, man, these guys are ripping you off. Like, you're never going to make any money. They're going to make all the money because this contract takes every piece of your intellectual property forever, in perpetuity, and you have no rights whatsoever. And at that time, it was Bob Meyer was running the company. He came from music, and in music, you take it all. That's what you do.
Right.
You treat the people good, but you take the money, and then you distribute it on the back end. So, so Henry stepped in and looked at it and then started advising me. And when he did, I started understanding, like, wow, I really am risking my life for one tiny check. And then these guys are going to monetize for eternity. I was like, that literally makes no sense. And so I started my free agency. I was in a multi-fight contract. I finished the contract. They wanted me to resign. And they wanted me to resign to fight Tito. And so I said, yeah, I'll sign. But I want this clause, should I ever publicly retire and announce my championship publicly, the rest of this contract shall be null and void. And so that's how I broke my contract, won the title, handed the belt, I beat up Tito, handed the belt back, and said, I'm exercising, thank you for the journey. And then I became a free agent. And then that allowed me to, pursue a Hollywood career. I was the first knucklehead for mixed martial arts doing the Hollywood thing. And, Vitor was at the same time, maybe a little ahead of me. But it just gave me full control where I could, do what I wanted with my brand and its performances. Walker, Texas Ranger, like I had a great little Hollywood run there. And then the sport exploded. And I was like, man, I can go back and make some more money. I still have all the skills, I'm still Frank Shamrock. And then when I came back the second time, I was able to really monetize and figure it out and take equity and, get points here and there and create, a real revenue stream where I owned, my IP.
Nice. If you could tell fighters right now when they get the contract, because obviously it's so exciting signing with the UFC, what would you really tell them to look over and try to say? Like, if you were managing a fighter, what would you want for them signing with the UFC if they were in your position where, they're a champion? Like, why? Let me ask you this. Do you think the UFC has the money to pay Francis? Why don't you think they would want to give them the money if they clearly have the money there? Like, the struggle still happens to this day. Or do you think it has to do with ego? What do you think it has to do with?
In that instance, I think it's just monetary precedence. If they break that mold if they break their monetary mold, it's going to leave them exposed to the next guy who goes, all right, well, look what they did to me. They literally tried to erase me because I started another league. I went against them. I continued my journey in promotion of the sport. They looked at me as a liability because I wasn't on the team. So they've done everything, they could to erase me and minimize my involvement. And that's, it's just business. But I was the example of don't say no, go along with the team, play ball. But I think once you break that precedent, but if you look at WWE, what happened with them? They held it for so long. Eventually, The Rock came along, and then he got so big that he jumped out. And then they went, wait, maybe we can't keep these reins on these guys all the time. Because now we need him back, and he's not happy that we fought him over his name and we sued him for the trademark and all the stuff that happens when somebody owns your IP, when somebody owns your name. And that's, WWE takes it all because they're their characters. They're building those characters. And technically, you could die off. They just hire your twin brother. Oh, new character, same character.
Right.
New moment, and just keep monetizing. So what I would tell young fighters is you got to start learning what's in these contracts and make a real decision based on the game. So the game is, if you are lucky, you're going to get 10 years, 12 years, 13 years if you're a young man. I went 16 years. Most people, it's a 10-year arc. If you ain't made a ton of money,
If you're lucky, yeah.
if you're lucky, then you need to start making some real decisions on what your value is, because you're just going to start breaking down and getting more and more damaged. And so, especially, this whole thing is make all the money you can, start not making money, get the heck out, just like any good business. And so, but to do that, you need to understand what you're giving away. And what people think I made a ton of money. I never made money fighting. I didn't make my money fighting. I made my money on the assets around fighting, starting leagues, selling leagues, negotiating branding contracts, being a consultant, being a spokesman, building brands. So when I signed a contract back in the day, it wasn't just fighting. I'm going to be your spokesman. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this to help build that intellectual property. And for that, I'm going to need a few points over here. I'm going to need some of that. And so it takes a long time to get to a position of value where you can ask for those things. And especially for me in the industry, that there wasn't enough cash flow to pay me the cash I actually needed or wanted or was valued as. So, you can't pay me the cash, don't worry about it. Let's work together over here on the back end to make this a huge successful event. And then just pay me a little more. And so, and all that came because I took on a business mentor. I realized I don't know what to do with this $10 million brand I just built, and I only got a few shekels in the bank. But how do I monetize the brand? How do I make money off of this IP that I now control? And I brought on a business mentor who worked, 30 years in engineering and product life cycles, and and he taught me an entire system on how to monetize assets. And so then I went, oh, wait a minute, now I don't have to fight 6 times, 5 times, 3 times a year. Now I got to fight once a year as the main event for the championship on pay-per-view and the biggest show possible. And the rest of the time I can do this business that makes money and this business, and I can do this that expands my brand. And so it was a constant growth process, because this is what all my coaches told me. It will end.
Yeah.
Where you can't perform. And then what do you got? Because you can't perform anymore. So where's your stack? What do you got? What do you have control of? What can you monetize? Because once the fighting comes to an end, it's not like you're ever going to fight again.
Right. And there's life after fighting. Yeah.
Yeah. There's
sure.
a long life. I've been retired for 14 years.
Wow. Well, Frank, you talked about the UFC doing everything it could to kind of erase you from their record books. Are you settled with that more than likely you'll probably never be in the Hall of Fame? And by the way, the Hall of Fame to me is a really mysterious thing, because I don't think it's a physical brick and mortar place, right? Unless they have photos that are tacked up on the walls in the Performance Institute. I don't know, but
I'm not sure how it works, but it's no sweat off my back. I've been honored in many halls of fame and received tons of accolades and support from martial arts, mixed martial arts, military, police. I've got a plethora of pats on the back. So if they don't appreciate the work that I've done, then there's nothing I can do about it.
For the people that don't know, what's the story behind that whole situation there, for the people listening in right now?
I think they tried a few years ago. They came and asked me, hey, can we get you in, through Maurice Smith.
Oh, really?
I think, he had gotten in, and then they were trying to get me in on that time. And I was like, let's talk about it. And then we got to like a week before, and I think someone had asked me about it in the interview, and I was like, I don't give a shit. Like, it doesn't affect my life either way. And then I think Dana heard that and then got offended. Like, so then I was never, they never sent plane tickets, so I was never officially invited. And then they came back a couple of years later, and they were like, hey, it doesn't look all that good because you're not in the Hall of Fame. And I was like, oh, okay, well, this doesn't make any sense. So if we're going to do business together, because this is what it seems like, then why don't we get back to some of these original rights agreements and stuff that we discussed at the beginning of our relationship? And they were like, yeah, we don't like that.
Oh, man.
But yeah, it's just business. And I'm very proud of what I've done, because I've seen the impact of globally the sports game itself, And then, even more importantly, through the teaching of martial arts, the impact that it's had. Like, I taught for 20 years. It's a huge part of my learning was teaching, guiding, and to see the college kids of my students 20 years later going, hey man, I'm still doing it. And this is even a better thing I figured out. And this is a great thing. And to be still on the journey of learning and not getting their heads punched in and taking a very scientific approach to learning martial arts, so they don't feel all weird and uncomfortable in these situations.
Now, you were really one of the first full-rounded mixed martial artists, and correct me if I'm wrong, you actually founded AKA. Am I correct there?
Well, no, I mean the MMA knowledge, yes, but AKA was in existence before me because they were a kickboxing academy. It stands for American Kickboxing Academy. So when I showed up, 97, maybe 96, it was all kickboxers, just kickboxing, doing their thing. I needed a place to train. My girlfriend who got caught in the bed with had lived there in the Bay Area. So I was in Susanville, after I left the Lions, and I had no place to train. I'd met Javier at one of the UFCs, and he said, come on down and train. And so I started my class there. Nobody came in at noon. So I just went in at noon every day and trained all by myself, doing all of my drills and working through all my theories and working through all my moves. And then that turned into, one guy, two guy, three guys, and that just kept growing. And then I started my mixed martial arts class there. I started my Shamrock MMA class there. And then from there, the whole thing just exploded because Bob Cook was my top student. And then he just kept training everybody and growing it. So yeah, you'll find my roots in particular at AKA and a lot of these different schools because, at the time, there was a weird vibe in the community where some people you couldn't train with. Like the Gracies would never train with us. But I learned martial arts. What do you mean you train with you? Like I thought we were all doing the same thing, but we were on different sides of the, history. But like the Machados would train with me. Some people wouldn't. Some people had an opinion like, oh, we can't do this. It's against whatever. And most people did because I'd be like, guys, we're on the journey for the truth. And by the way, I got this fight in 6 months of fighting this scary Russian dude. Most people would go, yeah, that doesn't make sense. Like, hey, let's train in martial arts. And then I would teach them. They would teach me, and it was this kind of growing thing. So if I look at, what was the biggest impact for me was being invited in and supported by that martial arts community and then watching it grow. Just watching it. And I traveled all over the world, but, just watching it multiply through, family to family and the positive impact that's had. And then the funny part was people, I talk about this when I speak to schools a lot, because the kids are like, how do I fit in? And I was the weirdest messed up kid you could ever imagine. Like I was so messed up. And looking back, it's like, oh my God, it was so like awkward and weird and what's wrong with me? But I didn't get all those skills and stuff when I was a young man. I didn't get that.
The social skills.
Yeah, where I was comfortable and I thought, I didn't get it. I didn't know what was going on. I was just traumatized all the time. But it was in the martial arts community where I found my people. They're just people going, hey, I don't feel all that good out there. And I need to learn something to make myself feel better. And so it was a perfect marriage because I felt the same way, just socially. I had the skills to kill everybody, but I couldn't communicate with people socially. And it was those people who were like, well, come on in. You're weird. Don't worry about it. Let's train. It was like, let's get to work. And that acceptance and that community made a difference for me. Like a lot of my colleagues burned out. A lot of my guys kept the fighting mindset. I'm a warrior. I'm a street thug. I'm a this. I'm a that. And, that's not that sustainable. Every warrior's got to hang up his spear at some point. Everybody's going to, eventually you're going to lose a street fight. But the idea of continuous growth, honor, respect, discipline, having a community that's on the same thought. We all had the same thought. We got to figure this out or Frank's going to get his ass kicked.
So let me ask you this. Back then when you were with the Lions Den, right? You left there, you go over to AKA, right? Back then, you guys were going real hard. And in the past couple of years, we've seen fighters kind of take a step back from the hard sparring, getting ready for fights, what did you bring into AKA that was different from your brother's gym that molded the way that gyms train now today?
Well, it became a lot more technical. Right through practical application, through study. We realized like, hey, some of these, this can be more efficient. This can be better. Like, hey, this can be, this flows. We didn't know. So I think it was just the constant evolution of the study of it, right? And that's, I was a nerd, and I was the only guy who showed up with a notebook. And I was the only guy going, I got this theory, man, about such and such and this and that. And it was so different because I was in prison. And in prison, I was in college. I was going to college every day. So I thought we were like, Dad, I thought we were studying stuff. I brought this scholastic, mindset with super determination into this crazy tough guy, world. And it allowed me to be totally different. And then it was okay when I went into martial arts, but they were all different. They were studying weird arts from thousands of years ago that were obscure, that they didn't even know if they worked or not. Like a lot of this stuff, they just been doing it and they don't know why they're doing it. Nobody's kicking people off horses anymore, but people are still studying Taekwondo, right? So a lot of the stuff, it wasn't applicable. Mine was applicable 100% to the moment. And most people went, well, we better pay some attention over there because this looks like it's reality. This looks like what really truly happens. And a lot of these, I used to train at the Stanford Wrestling Club, wrestling the Stanford wrestlers. And at that time, that nobody knew how to punch, nobody knew about submissions, like whatever. They were just college wrestlers. But I would literally go in and be like, guys, because I don't know how to wrestle. I really don't. I never wrestled. I didn't, studied it. I wrestled.
It looks like you do.
Yeah, I wrestled as much as I could, but I'm not, say, a wrestler. I don't really get it. I get it, but I don't do it enough to be considered a wrestler. And at that time, I was terrible. So I would just take these NCAA champ monsters and be like, put these gloves on, push me in the wall, and you can just tee off on me. Do whatever you want. I'm not even going to hit you back. All I'm going to try to do is stand up. And that's the game. And I turned fighting into all these little games. All right, listen, you're going to do this. I'm going to do this. Here's the game. And simplifying everything to take out this terrifying, I'm going to die thing made all the difference. I turned everything into games, a leg game, a choke game, the arm, all these different games, because then you focus differently on it. And it's a tweak in your mindset. You're under a high stress situation, but now you're just trying to achieve these 1-2 things that make that technique so much better. And this, people weren't talking about it. I'm like, well, let's make a game. They're like, what are you talking about? Everybody was, And so I went, well, who cares? If the martial artists are into it, I'll make a game out of it. We still play those games at kids' schools. We're still playing those games because they're so fundamentally good for the technique or moment that needs to happen. And, that came from my little silly notebook. Like, this is hard. Not getting it. Must make easier and fun. Okay, let's make a game. And then, some diagrams, some weird stuff, and then a whole bunch of classes where we're like, guys, I think I have a new game. Let's try it out. And literally, so from that human experience, from interacting people would be like, what? A game? And I would go teach seminars. I'd be like, all right, team, I got this great game idea that I think is going to reinforce this super important. Let's figure it out. And it was all these people collaborating, going, I like it, I don't like it, that's weird, oh, it hurt my hip, like, helping me figure the whole thing out. And I can say this to young fighters, if you're teaching what you will know it twice as good. So I always teach. When I learn something, I'm, okay, let me make sure I understand that properly. Okay, hey, Bob, come over here a second, I'm going to teach you something. Bob goes, what? I don't know, this is interesting. And then Bob's got questions or ideas himself. And in that collaborative thinking, that's how you become a champion. There's never any end to it. If you want to be something, then it's like, okay, great. Who's already done it? Who's in that group? What are the first steps? And like, let's go do that. And the beauty of martial arts is it just reinforces that. Hey, every day, train to be better at your task, your skill, yourself. And I think that fiber of conscious improvement is the key to having a good life.
There's
Nice.
so much beauty
Oh,
within mixed martial arts. But as you mentioned, like people hurt their hips. There's been a lot of studies on CTE. We see former opponents that you fought, like Phil Baroni or Nick Diaz, going through very hard times. I'm actually a recovering opioid addict. And I've spoken to people like Elias Theodoro, who was a big advocate for weed. You know, a lot of fighters back then, I feel like they were pushed towards opiates. And if they smoked weed, they were getting lifetime bans or 2 years out. What's been your experience with some of the pain management that has really shaped what you would like to see? Because opioids and all of that, it's a very dangerous thing that we don't know what we're getting into. And you guys go in there and you get beat up. There's people, even my family, recovering alcoholics and drug addicts, they find weed and it's so much more helpful. Like I'm literally getting chills right now, even discussing this with you, because you've actually been there and you've actually seen the people that have been affected by this.
Mhm.
What have you seen over the years? Like I said, Phil Baroni, you fought. Obviously, he's been in a lot of trouble lately. Nick Diaz, he's been seen lighting grass on fire. Amazing people, right? What did you see back then? Were they pushing these medicines? Were they the same people they were back then that you see now?
Well, I mean, I've seen a tremendous decline in the past two generations of fighters, uh, and a lot of it is physical, just damage. A lot of it is damage to the brain. A lot of it is damage through years of abuse of drugs or stuff like that. And the problem with that is it just compounds. So you get 3 years, it's bad. It's 5 years, it's three times. You get 10 years, it's like 100 times as bad, and you just like fall off a cliff. I was really lucky when I went through because of my pre-existing injuries. So I have a broken vertebrae in my L5S1. I got scoliosis, spondylolisthesis, and I had basically a broken lower spine. And so when I was 16, my whole right leg went numb, started dragging behind me. And I went to the doctor, and he goes, "Oh, at some point you've broken your spine, and we got to do immediate spinal surgery, and you're going to be in a cast for a year, and you're probably never going to play any type of contact sports." And I go, "Oh, okay, boy, I got this dream of being a champion," and yada yada yada. And so then I was in a group home. My group home dad took me to the chiropractor. He's like, "Oh, the quacks, they just want to cut you," and so we take the chiropractor. So I went down there, and I met this wonderful chiropractor guy, and he said, "Yeah, at some point you broke your spine. What the doctor said is correct, but here's the risks with that type of surgery. There's 50% chance you'll just go ahead and be in pain for the rest of your life. So there's not a high probability. This is where we're at with science." I go, "Oh no!" And he's like, "I can fix it. I can show you these exercises. I can teach you how to stay in place, and I can teach you how to manage it if you want to go on this journey." So I'm going on the journey. I'm be champion, without a doubt. At the time, I would have been boxing champion. So because that's what I wanted. That was my dream. And he said, "Here's the problem. You're going to be in pain for the rest of your life. And so you need to figure out a way to stop the pain, because if you take these painkillers, you'll be a drug addict after 10 years. And then your whole body will be addicted to these things, and then you'll struggle with that, as well as the pain and the instability and the whole structure." So he gives me this talk. I'm 16 years old, but my mom was like a hippie woman, and she had the same thing. You don't take aspirin unless your leg's falling off. Like we didn't have any of that. Like, you break an arm, put some ice on it. Like my mom was hardcore, and
rub some dirt on it.
yeah, she believed in natural, healthy healing, natural food. Good food that heals you. So I went in with this. Okay, good food, healthy, can't be a drug addict. Figure out a way to pain, and do these exercises. I've been doing those exercises for 35 years. They keep my spine in place, and sometimes it pops out, sometimes it's uncomfortable. The past 2 years have been pretty tough because now I'm 52 and everything's just falling apart. And sometimes I get up and it's way over here and I can't get it back. And so I'm crooked for half the day, or I got to go put it in place and kind of do this thing. I know a lot of colleagues, I know a lot of regular people with this injury that end up addicted, have horrible pain. I watched a lot of the era of Nubane and really hard injectables, through professional wrestling. But I mean, unless you're dying, you don't need that stuff. In truth, I mean, And I take a very holistic approach to it. If you're in pain, there's something wrong. Figure out what's wrong and address it.
Fix that. Yeah.
To the best of your ability. And then by the way, if you need something that strong, there's something really wrong with you. You need to go address that like right away, because that's, I've broken my arm, I've had the Percocet, I had the button, but once that's gone, you don't need that stuff. I don't need that to keep going. And when you do, then you got a serious problem, and you just got to address it, because it'll just kill you. My brother was a homeless addict, died after 10 years on the streets. And we watched it. We watched him look like this, and then at the end look like a crazy old homeless guy. And we could not stop it. So it's a real thing. But if you are in pain and you're doing sports, you just got to be careful on what people give you, and know it's your body. I'm in control of this thing. I go to the doctor. I tell him what I need. Hey, man, because they're gonna be like, what? You can't hold your spine together for 35 years. I'm like, yeah, I'm still doing it. So now I got this issue. I need your help over here. And they go, oh, okay. Oh, okay. And back in the day, I used to show up with my X-rays before all the digital stuff. I would go to fights, and I'm like, well, if I get hurt, this makes logical sense. We can't have all this guy. So I'd show up at the emergency room with my X-rays and a manila folder. Because I wanted to be in charge of it. I wanted to understand, like, hey, man, this happened to me. I'm taking the risk. You don't know me. You're just going to do a quick assessment and give me some pills. Like, no, dude. Like, I want to know as much as possible and do as much as possible to try to avoid things like addiction and things like, I don't want side effects. I just want the pain to go away.
Gotcha.
Now, Champ, I want to ask you something.
Hey, Eddie, hold on. Do you mind if I?
Yeah.
Jump in. All right. So Frank, you mentioned not being like a pure wrestler.
Yeah.
Would you say that your ground game base is catch wrestling?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, because and I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of catch wrestling. I love it so much versus BJJ. I think it's a viable alternative. I mean, obviously you want to integrate everything. If you're a fighter, you don't want to just totally disregard one style. But catch wrestling has always interested me. Ken was trained. He trained with guys like Funaki and Suzuki, right?
Yeah.
How would you trace your lineage and those guys were trained by like Carl Gotch? And
I think,
how does the lineage go
I think they trained with Carl Gotch or Fujiwara, one of the two, or both. But the original lines are, I know Fujiwara and Carl Gotch. Like, I know their original base. And then from me going forward, it was Ken first, and then Suzuki and Funaki were my teachers in Japan. And then Maurice Smith, and then Eric Deuce. Eric Deuce became my wrestling coach, which, by the way, I trained with Eric Deuce for 20 years.
Wow.
And only one time got him to his hip. Never took him down in 20 years. And I tried harder than you could ever imagine.
But he was your wrestling coach?
He was my wrestling coach, yeah.
Was he like a collegiate level or Olympic?
Yeah, I think he was like a AA champion, went to Olympic trials. I found him because he had beaten Kevin Jackson in a wrestling match. And when I looked up Kevin Jackson's record, I see this guy's name on there. And I go, wait a minute. And he only lived like 15 miles from my house, Open Stanford. So I hit him up, boom, he became my wrestling coach. But to your point of wrestling, like I think it's because of the structure of my back. It's hard for me to stay like in a wrestling structure, right? So when I was always performing and trying to learn, I was always like, man, this is more energy than I think I need to figure out. Mm-hmm. So and then so I never really was good at wrestling. But remember when I beat Igor Zinoviev with that slam and just destroyed him? So the comical part is I learned that technique from a high school wrestler in Texas who stovepiped me and almost killed me. Like I couldn't move for hours. He left went back to high school and kept wrestling or whatever he was doing. He was probably like 17 years old. But I didn't know this mechanic of wrestling. You can never stand up and grab that. Like you never do that. Because in fighting you can. In grappling you can. In pancrase you can. In wrestling you're going to get lifted up and stovepiped. And so this kid did it to me. And I went, okay, but wait a minute. He always grabs the head. He always does. Like, he always does this move. And he only because he was so strong and he had such technique in these other things, judo, sambo, was he able to maintain that. But I realized, like, yeah, but biomechanically, I'm like 10 times his strength once I'm underneath him like this. And so that kid taught me that technique that won me my second championship. Rando kid, I don't even know his name, but he kicked my ass with that move.
Wow. Yeah, it reminded me of the slam that Kevin Randleman did on Fedor in Pride. Now Fedor had like a rubberneck because it didn't affect him, but it was a beautiful, absolutely beautiful slam.
Yeah, well, I added
yours and Randleman's.
Yeah, once I understood what it was and the effects of it, then what most people miss is after I lift him up and I get fully straight, I jump and dive my shoulder into his neck and collarbone. That's why all that stuff broke, and it's because I was like lift, dive, and my weight combined with his weight hitting his side. That's what did it. I broke everything. You could hear it was like crunching on chicken bones. It was right by my ear. And I was like, oh, I just ruined the sport. Dang it.
Wow.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah, but just like I dreamed. I dreamt that one. I dreamt Kevin Jackson one. Because I was so deep in my studies. I was doing visualization training.
Oh, okay. All right. So you were seeing these things in your mind.
I was literally sleeping and watching myself train as a third person, talking to somebody or maybe talking to myself, and understanding that there were holes in what the stuff we were doing. So I was so deep, I'd fall asleep, meditate, visualize my training techniques, visualize what I'm working on. Boom, I fall asleep, I'm over there. I'm training on the mat. I'm doing the stuff my brain is thinking about, but I'm also over here going, well, what about this? And I've got a theory, and that's really interesting. And what would happen is something would happen over there or here, who knows, maybe at the same time, and my brain would go, that's it. That's the missing piece. And then I would wake up. And then I'd write it down. I'd be like, what? 90-degree theory here, and Bob's your uncle, and this seems important. And then I would go back to sleep, and I would go back to training again. And then because that thing had stuck in my brain, it would keep happening, but from different scenarios and different ideas. And other people would come in, and they'd have conversations about it. And I'd be over here going, So all that visualization turned into lucid dreaming. And so I was able to see the holes in the styles because I'd study all their fights. So I'd study everything. I knew exactly what Vitor would do. I knew exactly what Kevin Jackson would do. I knew exactly what Tito would do. Because I'd watch them, I'd record it all, I'd write all the theories down, I'd dream about it, visualize it.
Man.
And then I'd be like, yep, and no one's gonna kill me. So it was that type of preparation and that type of mindset towards just, we're gonna keep building, we're gonna keep the knowledge until this thing is complete. There's no holes, there's no weakness. And I still had weakness, I still never got to perfection. I just got to a point where I was the first one to put everything together and be like, here's a system that will stand up to all systems and give you the highest probability of success.
Wow.
Now, I have one last question. Ted has one last question, and it has to do with being remembered and reconciliation. People really want to know, where do you and your brother stand right now in history? We spoke about the Hall of Fame. Your brother got brought into Hall of Fame with Hoist and this and that. Where do you and your brother stand? Because we watched the documentary where you two sat down. He asked you to fight it out. Where do you two stand today?
He asked me to fight. Oh, that's so much fun. So I was the executive producer on that, and had sold that to Spike TV, right? And so he had gone behind my back and told them, I can pick a fight with him, and then we'll do it on Spike TV. So he did the old double turn. I came in all loving, and we're going to heal this, and this doesn't make any sense. Let's move forward. He's back double dealing the thing. So I didn't know at the time. And
of course, that never materialized.
Yeah, but I went there to it didn't make sense, right, after a certain time. And I truthfully only carried on that animosity because I thought at some point we'd be able to monetize it. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm like, I don't know Ken that well. I don't get Christmas cards. I don't get text, phone calls. He never showed up. It's we don't have that type of relationship, and it got spoiled during this process, of fame and money and antagonist stuff. And but I was never into it. Once I left, I was like, well, I saw what was given to me. I saw what was lacking. I saw what was needed, and I just made the best decisions for me because it was my body, it was my risk. I mean, I'm doing it. And it was almost when Ken said, you're not a champion. You're not that. It almost gave me permission to go. And could go on my journey. Because if I stayed there, I would have been under that umbrella of thinking. And because if Ken believed I couldn't be a champion, then what was going to happen? Like, I would not be a champion. So it was contrary to what I thought was important for me. And then it was also, it was contrary to this belief, like, hey, we're fighting for the thing, we're doing what's right, we're learning, we're helping people. It was contrary to the martial journey that I was on. And so it really was a permission, because if he'd have said, hey, you're great, hang in there, let's do this. I got you. It may have been an entirely different journey. So yeah, who can say? But I have no animosity against him. I love Ken, and more for what he did for me. He didn't want me there. Ken did not want me there. He told me, I don't want you here. And they tried to beat the living shit out of me, so I wouldn't be there. But if you look at it from his standpoint, I was just some punk kid that went to prison and was in all this trouble and had all these issues and this, that, and the other. And I was only there because Bob Shamrock loved me. I was the second son, right? Or the replacement son, however you want to look at it. So I love all those people. I love the journey. I have no animosity against UFC. That's their business decision. They decided to go and do those things, and I decided to go a different direction. And I did it for integrity. I did it for my integrity. Hey, this is what's important to me. This is what's fair. This is what we should do. If you don't want to do those things, I don't want to hang out with you because that's not the martial way. I don't want that stuff to infect me. I want to be on this journey to achieve championship, and I want the journey to finish with all these people that are like, yeah, we did it. Let's do this collaboratively. And that's what I took into my business. Once I got out of mixed martial arts and I kind of took a break, I just reapplied that to all my business stuff. So I do business with my friends. I do business with people I meet, and I really enjoy their energy and their family and what they're doing for the community. And I invest in dreams. And people, it's like, here's my dream, and I'm like, oh, let's break that down because I like that idea. And I remember the time when I was running around telling people, listen, this is gonna be the greatest sport in the world. Like, you don't understand. Like, I've seen it. I've seen it, and I would tell this story about being in the Midwest and sitting next to a sweet grandma, and she's clutching my arm, going, oh my God, I'm so nervous and so scared, and what is happening? And I'm like, well, what is your name, hon? And she'd be like, I'm Dolores. And I go, would you know somebody here? She's like, my grandson is fighting in a couple of fights. And she's, I'm so nervous, I'm so scared. And do you know anything about this? And I'd be like, oh yeah. And so I'd, communicate with this lovely woman, and she'd go, oh no, he's coming out. 5 minutes later, kill him, kill. Grandma would go 180, just, and I would tell
That's
this.
awesome.
I would tell this in meetings because they'd be like, no, his cage is terrible. It's terrible. And I go, you don't understand. I have seen it. I've seen a transformation in a human being that would look away and completely be disavowed of this. And I go, there's some magic here. And then the hilarious part is everybody would be like, no, what are you talking about? I'd get kicked out of the room. People would close my laptop. One guy stood up. I was in Texas. He goes, son, we talking about cage fighting? I go, yes, sir. We call it mixed martial arts. He's like, it'll never get on television. Marched out. But the journey, right? The journey, because every time someone said no, I was like, God, I just don't see it right. They don't see it like I see it. And I got better at storytelling. I got better at presenting. I got better at understanding how people's brains work. And that, that old lady story does it every time. Because they're like, oh, you're right. That is the thing. Like, there's something very special and unique. And I watched it happen. This lady went from trembling to kill in a very short period of time. So, when I coach people, especially for young fighters, you gotta believe in yourself in this journey because you're the one at risk. It's nobody else. It's your body, and this is your journey. And the hardest thing for me to see, just talking about CTE and stuff, a lot of my colleagues got brain damage. And, I was there going, hey, bro, we need a good theory for this. Like, we need to understand this because I'm watching 10 years from now, this guy's already dripping and spitting and he can't remember things. I'm like, team, we got to address this. And nobody wanted to talk about it. Nobody wanted to address it. But people that I trained, people that trained with me were like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. You shouldn't hurt, you should never hit your brain. You should, that it's a computer. You should never damage it. We got to protect it. So then the style has to be built around that. The style has to be built around protecting the computer. Otherwise, when you're done, you have a dead computer and this broken machine. Ooh, that makes no sense. So a lot of people on that journey that I think would have gone over here and been like, don't worry about it. My boxing coach told me, Javier Mendez, it's okay, it doesn't hurt. Just don't let him hit you hard. I go, no, what are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense. That's where the Jello theory came from. Your brain is Jello in a bowl. You shake the bowl, the Jello breaks up. Oh, you got brain damage. You never shake the bowl. You never break the Jello. And I talk at schools all the time, contact sports, football, all these things. I'm like, team, we got to keep studying or we're just going to keep damaging this computer. You would not drop your iPhone. Why are you letting somebody punch you in the computer? Why are you purposely banging your computer on something? Why are you bouncing your computer off of objects? It doesn't make any sense. So the ability to communicate that and create, things like the Jello theory, things like the games, that get people over that edge of understanding and knowledge so it benefits their lives. I'm still doing it. And that's what keeps me going. That feels good, feels good. But it makes me sad, man, to see these kids. I mean, I love my girlfriend. She doesn't believe in it. She doesn't believe in it.
Doesn't believe in what, Frank?
She doesn't believe in CTE. I don't believe. But the science in my head and
that's because you're so sharp. That's because you're so sharp with
there you go, Eddie. There's the answer.
No, I got guys who are but here's the reality of it, right? If I'm a mom or dad and I'm just taking my kid to football, I don't want to hear that shit. I want my son to play football. We don't worry about that. I want my son to play football. I want to play, So it's that stepping over reality and education and science that, we gotta protect people up here or it's just going to keep getting worse and worse. And I think we're just beginning to see the first wave of this in mixed martial arts. And then, Gen 3 and 4, these guys are banging it out, man. These guys are crushing your brains. These guys are sucking the water out before they do it. I never cut any weight. I want all that water in my Jello to protect it. And if I got
getting $50,000 because of it too, to go out there and do.
If that,
it's crazy. So I think if you're just getting into the sport, or if you're a young guy, if you're on the first third of your journey, this is the stuff that's important. Not big biceps, not you know what I mean? This is what, and the belts, they're great, but having the knowledge, if I'm going to go into a business deal, I need to understand every risk and everything associated with that business. Because if I don't, then that's not a good business for me that's not good business. Same, even more so with fighting, because your personal self is at risk. And you should understand the risks and you should understand the result. Because unless you are super dedicated and down and you're willing to give your life to this, it's going to be a short, fun career, maybe not fun. You're just going to end up with a crooked knee and a little painful shoulder and maybe an eye that twitches. But is that what you want at the end of your journey? Or do you want to do, 6-7 years and come out fresh, healthy, happy, and have learned how to care for your body? I mean, that's my advice. Know the risks and start learning, because fighting is just one part of it.
Frank, how would you like to be remembered?
As a handsome, yeah, I mean, I think I just want people to remember me as a good teacher and a student and a champion. I think all of those are combined, in being a champion. I don't think you become a champion and then you just stop being a good teacher or a leader or a communicator. I think, it's part of it. So I still teach. I still think it's important to protect women and, communities at risk. I still believe in the value of martial arts and what it does for a community and a society. And I think if people remember that, then I'll be good. And if they don't, then I'll be good.
Either way.
Either way, I'll be good. But I am really impressed with the youth now in their studying of mixed martial arts, right? Because unlike me, they got a blueprint. They got literally a manual. They could be like, oh, I like this, I like that. This feels good, and that feels good. Back then we had to try it all out, and some hurt. Yeah, it hurts the shoulder. We got to stop doing that technique. What the youth have done with the information available is, like, you watch these 12-year-old kids, and they look like, UFC championship matches.
Oh, really? Wow.
It's just because it all flows now. Before it was like, and they fall over, and now, because the studies have gone so far, you start learning from day one all these flows. You start learning from day one the good biomechanics so that things will flow. And that I'm very proud of. It's been passed down, and people have their own ideas about it. But this body hasn't changed in 100,000 years, bro. It works the same. Like, it moves the same. Like, it's not going to change. So studying the movement, studying those things, the kids now, this next gen, and the teachers for their part, have really stepped up with going, okay, we're machines. How do we maximize? And then, the next thing is, how do we maximize and not get damaged?
Well, Frank, I just want to say thank you so much. And to me, like I said, someone that stood with me as a champion is somebody who is able to talk and make points and sculpt the way that history is made. Without the Hall of Fame, to all the diehards out here, to people like Ted who have seen you over the years, me growing up, renting these tapes from Tommy K's, getting chills once again, I want to thank you for staying true to being a champion who speaks for what's important, because it's still sculpting what is most important now in this era. And I want to thank you so much for that.
No, mad respect, brother. I appreciate you, man.
Yeah, thank you, Frank. It's great. Great.
I wish you guys the greatest of success. And
thank you.
let me know. I got some guys maybe to get you some good guests too.
Oh, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah. I think Mauro Ronaldo might be a good guest if you're into Mauro.
Ooh, that's one of my idols right there.
Yeah, he's a great guy. Mauro's my best friend, and I'm his manager as well. But
he's literally my. Talk about Gonzo.
He has an amazing story and a talent that is unfathomable. Which, by the way, he only shows 5% of it when he's performing. So I've been trying to get him for the last 7 or 8 years to show his real talents, and I think this is the year. So I'd love to get him on your show.
Oh, that'd be great. We'd love to see all the hidden talents. We want them all.
Play music for you. He might sing for you. I got him tapped deeply into his spiritual well. He's 55 now, and he's top of his game. He's climbed the hill. He's the man of the man. And,
poetic, very poetic.
Yeah, now he's looking for ways to enjoy his life, right? Enjoy what he's doing and enjoy the success that he's had. But he's worked for 45 years doing nothing else. So I'm like, bro, it's time to do something. It's time to stretch your wings a little bit. But him sharing his story, I think, would be really valuable. And then him and I are starting to looking to start a meetup in Santa Monica on the beach for bipolar disorder. So Mauro has bipolar disorder, and then struggle with emotions and emotionality and different states. But I've been coaching him for 12 years now, managing him for that time as well. And when you're communicating to your people, to your group, like for me, it's martial artists. For me, it's business people. For me, it's the people that are most interesting to my thing. One of the things missing in his life is having his people. His people are bipolar people. They have the same experience. They're like, the world's gonna end. No, I'm good. Like,
yeah.
And it's a natural, that's how the computer's programmed. And so it's not till you get with another computer, you guys start going, that you go, oh wait, that's not so bad, or hey, that feels good, or this, that, and the other. So anyways, for him, we're thinking of starting that. And then I realized nobody's doing it. Like, there's no place where you can go somewhere if you got something like this and be like, hey man, having a tough day, bro. Like, things are hard right now, but I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And, for me, it was, I got a crazy theory. Let's talk about it. But for them, it's like, hey, I got this feeling, or I got this struggle, or this happened, and I'm not sure how to, how do I deal with that? having him exercise that activism, I think will be really beneficial to him. So
That would be great.
I'm gonna put him on your show.
That sounds great. Yeah, we'd love to have him.
Yeah, we'll help some folks.
Because I've been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and like I said, the opioid struggle, like a lot of trauma. That, like, when I say he's one of my idols, like, this is Gonzo MMA, Hunter S. Thompson, like, spiritual colors in the wind type. That would be the perfect guest, honestly, Frank.
Let's do it.
I just want to let you know I'm gonna be producing this professionally, like this interview that we just did. I'm going to chop it up. I'm going to make it beautiful, clips, this, that. So it's going to take a little while to come out, but it's going to be produced professionally. And my friend Robin messaged me. He said he just had you on as well, Robin Black.
Yeah.
He messaged me the other night because I've been friends with him for a very long time. And he said that he was having you on. And it's a great community here, just helping one another grow. And you being a legend, it's just so important to share these stories because history's been made, but it's up to the journalists and people to share these stories that really help one another, just like mixed martial arts. It's all one big thing, one community that keeps pushing the human spirit forward to not just lay in bed all day. It's hard sometimes.
Yeah, no, it definitely, yeah. Well, I appreciate you, brother. Yeah, I'd love to get you guys connected. And I don't know if you've ever seen Morrow's movie, Bipolar.
I have. Oh, I have.
Oh, I haven't seen it yet. I got.
You got to see it, Dad. Yeah, I produced that one as well. It just, the talent, the struggle, the triumphs. It was really a hero's journey story because it really is like he's been through the ringer with this thing, and I can tell you how Mauro and I became friends. I was broadcasting next to him on Showtime. Live. We're about ready to go live on the air at my audition for Showtime. Mauro looks at me and he goes, "Buddy, you okay?" I go, "Man, can I be honest with you?" He goes, yeah. I go, "I don't watch sports or television, so I don't know what I'm doing." He goes, "What do you mean? You didn't go to broadcast school?" I go, "Broadcast school? I went to Folsom Prison." He goes, "Oh." He goes, "Oh." He goes to production. He goes, hold on a minute. Turns to me and gives me a 5-minute lesson on broadcasting.
Wow.
This is how you pass. This is how you move them. When it comes to you, this is what you do. This, don't look over there. Breaks it down. All in 5 minutes. I go live on there. I get a job. Lasts for 12 years. Adds to my career. And then from that moment on, we've been friends because he looked at me and went, "This guy's about to crap. Like he's losing it." And why? He took a moment to check in with me, the legend, toughest guy in the world. He stopped and, "You good, bro?" And I'm like, "I'm actually not."
Wow.
And he helped me.
Wow.
So I've been helping him ever since.
That's fantastic. That's amazing.
Yeah, good dude. So let's get him on the show, man.
Absolutely. 100%.
Cool.
Frank, thank you so much. We'll be in touch. I'll let you know when this is coming out, and we'll talk then. Once again, it's just an honor to be able to talk to you, and I appreciate everything that you shared on tonight's episode.
Man, it's my pleasure. You guys keep up the good work.
Frank.
All right. God bless.
Peace.
Take care, man.
You still here, Ted?
I'm here.
Let me call you right back from my phone so I could pee really quick.
Okay.
All of the noise and stuff, I'll be able to edit all that out with the new program I got too.
You mean his dog?
Yeah.
His little legit dog in the background. Oh my God.
Yeah, I'll be able to. I was thinking that in the beginning, but I'll be able to because I've done it about 50 other times before in interviews. I knew you were gonna think that. And for his video quality, I have his video recording, so it doesn't look like that on his end. It looks like that on our end. Okay.
Oh my God, that was the other thing that was bothering the shit out of me. All right.
Yeah, it doesn't look like that on his end. I have 3 different recordings from you, from him, and then from mine. Okay. So we'll be able to.
Go take care of yourself.
Go pee in the toilet that it can't flush. This is just brutal, bro.
It's yellow. Let it mellow.
Yeah. All right. I'll call you right back, Ted.
Sounds great.
All right.
See ya.